Here's one of the biggest challenges I see when working with couples. And if I'm honest, it shows up in my own relationship too. One partner thinks they're simply sharing their thoughts, concerns, or needs, while the other hears criticism, blame, or personal attack. Before long, both people feel misunderstood, defensive, and frustrated, wondering how a simple conversation turned into an argument. That's why I'm excited to have Dr. Jessica Higgins joining me on the podcast today. We're diving into what's really happening beneath the surface of our communication when we think we're speaking one language, but our partner is hearing something completely different. Dr. Jessica holds 2 graduate degrees in psychology, 2 coaching certifications, and has spent more than 20 years helping individuals and couples create stronger, healthier relationships. She's also the host of the Empowered Relationship podcast, where she helps people navigate the complexities of lasting intimacy with greater awareness and skill. Through her coaching courses and teaching, she helps people transform pain, conflict, and disconnection into deeper love and connection. If you've ever found yourself thinking, that's not what I meant, or why does every conversation turn into a fight, then this episode is for you. So go grab a warm drink and let's dive in. Welcome to Relationship Reset, a podcast for high-achieving couples who've been together for over a decade and don't want to feel like roommates anymore. I'm Katie Rustler, relationship strategist and couples counselor with almost 20 years of experience helping ambitious couples reconnect, strengthen communication, and turn their relationship into the best part of their success story. This podcast is about using practical tools and a lot of real talk to help you understand your patterns, stop feeling stuck and discouraged, and start working on your relationship in ways that actually fit your busy life. Because your relationship shouldn't be the cost of your success, it should be the best part of it. So let's dive in. A big topic when I work with couples is around feedback. One partner thinks they're giving feedback, and the other person just hears criticism and attacking. So I have brought Dr. Jessica Higgins to the podcast to help us uncover what's going on in our communication when we think we're speaking one language, but our partner's hearing another language. So Dr. Higgins, thank you so much for being here today and sharing with us your wisdom.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited about our conversation.
Let's get started with introduce yourself a little bit and share kind of the topics you're most passionate about speaking on.
Oh my goodness, we could be here for a long time. I'm a psychologist and I'm also a relationship coach. And my dissertation was on conscious intimate relationship. That was many, many years ago. When I launched into my brick and mortar private practice, I recognized at that time, it was like 2009, 2010. I feel like it was this kind of transitional period where there was still this classical notion around seeking support was more something's wrong or one partner was afraid it was the beginning of the end, right? It's, oh, for seeking support, then something's wrong. Also, as we've gained a lot more access to information via podcasts and articles, people are becoming much more aware that there are relational principles that we can deepen our understanding and our practice with that ultimately help cultivate a more fruitful, satisfying, intimate relationship. And I think many of us didn't necessarily have that modeled for us. And also it's such a private topic, even though maybe through friendship, there might be certain topics that are discussed. It's hard to really get the visibility. And then you add media on top of that, which sometimes will glamorize certain aspects of partnering or being in relationship, particularly the bonding phase, right? The infatuation and just the high of finding someone that's a good fit. And yet cultivating long-lasting intimacy is a journey and typically requires a lot of investment.
Absolutely. One of the things, and I'm sure you've found this too, that I really love about Esther Perel, the Gottmans, Terry Real, they are very honest that it still takes a lot of work in their relationship. That it is not easy breezy. And like, they're like, yesterday we were fighting. And I'm like, what? No, you aren't supposed to fight. But it's like, no, actually, that's what a normal, healthy relationship is. It's interactions, disharmony, and going back to that repair. But we don't always know how to repair. And especially when it comes to communication and that, hey, I'm just trying to give you some feedback, some constructive criticism. So what have you found in your work around communication and better understanding why we have the need to give our partner feedback and how it can go the wrong way fast?
Well, I just want to normalize that often in Western cultures, we're utilizing our intellect. And in some industries, whether or not we're CEOs, we're attorneys, we're physicians, we're scientists, we're engineers, like these are a lot of the people that I work with, and entrepreneurs. And there's a value to strategic thinking, to addressing a problem, solving it, having strategy. Like these are, or you're making decisions throughout the day where you developed your skill set to be an expert. And so that opinion is heavily valued, and it would make sense you would want to use a valuable asset in your relationship. And yet, when we partner, the most primary need is for that sense of safe haven. And this is wired up in our nervous systems, our attachment system, that we want to feel a sense of home, sense of safety. And that's not to say that we're not growing. I think each individual, if we're talking about a monogamous relationship, each individual is growing, and then hence the relationship is growing. So it's not necessarily stagnant in the sense of security and comfort, like we sometimes think of predictability and those type of things. So these sometimes are competing needs. But coming back to communication, we don't tend to look at the relational system around what skills we're practicing there, and that it is a different environment. So we might come in with certain opinions or observations that we feel are really valuable, and our partner is so eager to get that input. And truthfully, partners usually aren't that receptive to unsolicited feedback. So the unsolicited corrective feedback, we're not signing up to be evaluated. We didn't go into a program and say, I want your assessment of me. And the other thing that's problematic about offering unsolicited feedback, or what might even sound critical, is that the person that's leading with that feedback, I would say, I don't want to say all the time, but I would say more often than not, has a genuine need that they're trying to get addressed or get attention around. And it's spoken in a way that the other person likely will feel defensive because it's a characterization of the partner versus a real visible, hey, when X, Y, and Z happens, stating some version of what's happening, but here's where I go. Here's what happens for me. Here's what gets activated. And that's the thing that somebody wants response to. They're looking for, I have an uncomfortable sensation. I feel threatened, or I feel insecure, and this is hard, and I want to have some focus around it. But when we start with something that's feedback, the other person's like, I drive fine, or I contribute all the time, or, that there's then a debate about facts, and that usually gets people off track.
Even our good intentions of, have you noticed you tend to do this, is about our own, you annoy me and I'm tired of you doing this, so please stop. It isn't actually hey, personal growth moment here. Because if it was about that personal growth moment, would be hey, I've been thinking about this in my own life. Would you be up for talking about it? Let me make it more about how we can grow together instead of you're doing this thing.
Or, I do think there's a time and space where, I'm talking about solicited or unsolicited. Just last night, my husband was sharing a thread. It was a work interaction with 2 other colleagues and leadership. And he was asking for my opinion and legit wanted my feedback. And so he was soliciting it. And so I had layers of feedback, and, I was offering it to him, but he asked, right? Or if we're noticing our partner and they're struggling with something, many times I'm more of the person that has lots of feedback. I'm the person that sees, wants to verbalize and process. And so there are times in my marriage where I will say, hey, I notice and I have thoughts. I don't know if you're open to it or wanting. And sometimes he'll say no, and sometimes he is interested. But I kind of seek permission before launching in. It's almost like I'm encroaching on his space a little bit. So, and we've got a front row seat to one another. So it's a special, unique position to be in partnership where we are going to be witnessing each other. So I think it's a really beautiful thing to be noticing and being in a space of communication where that can be welcomed. I do think set and setting, and also what's the real need underneath, is critical.
Absolutely. I like that you brought up at the beginning of this that we typically talk about feedback and sharing our thoughts in a work environment where your opinion is valued and
Yeah.
hey, what are your thoughts on XYZ? Especially if you work from home or you have like part-time working from home, right? And then in the office, it can be hard to turn off that brain when you go out the door into the next room and your partner's there. And you're like, hey, they share a bad day they had, or, oh, I just got off this call and this happened. And you're like, let me start giving you feedback on this. And as you said, it's unsolicited, but it doesn't mean that we don't mean well. And I think often we get defensive when it's like, well, but I have good intentions, right? Like I wanted to help, but like you said, if they don't ask for the help, it's not going to be received well. So why not give the gift when they actually want to receive the gift?
Okay, yes, yes, and yes. And one thing that I will say, I agree with you. There is a bit of switching roles and really giving some time and space. I remember in grad school, there was a woman who she had focused a lot of her work on play. And it was kind of a workshop type of elective class, but it was this embodiment. But she really had an intentional threshold around you're walking through this threshold and giving yourself the space and permission to be more playful, to be more spontaneous. Like there's certain environments where that's not appropriate, right? And so when we come into this home space, even if it's the next room, there could be something valuable. And as I'm saying this, I'm like, oh, I can benefit from doing this. I'm in home office right now. And really recognizing the space that I'm entering into, because the intentionality around that. Because Katie, I often feel like the attunement piece of noticing our partner, noticing the shared space, even being present to what I'm experiencing. I can't always be in that space of awareness, but when I can, there's a lot more opportunity for connection. Let's say my partner's lamenting about something and I'm like, bing, I've got like all these light bulbs around like, oh, this could be a good coaching, like I have thoughts and, there's things that I feel like could be really, and he actually genuinely values and wants my input. And at the same time, if a partner's wanting to feel really heard, like this is a space usually where it is private or intimate and it's like your person that you're going to go to with intimate, vulnerable details that you probably wouldn't share with a lot of other people.
Right.
So to feel have that turn right into like feedback moment. And when like I'm craving to just feel understood or seen or even deepen in it. So, and that's not always easy to know because we don't always signal it to each other. We don't always cue each other. I know that it's really helpful on the front end to say, oh, I'm really just wanting to hear your listening around this or your attunement around this. And my husband was really cute. He came up with, we don't use it all that often anymore, but there was a period of time where I think it's still really useful to, when someone shares before the person responding, querying, even if it's not clear, to query. And he used this language of, are you wanting comfort or solutions?
Yes.
And that's a bit, and sometimes I wouldn't know. I would have to pause and like, what am I wanting? Like, we don't always, again, that intentionality, we're not always present to. Where are we motivated? What's the motivation here?
Yes, I have a friend a couple years ago that taught me just by modeling it. She would say, how can I support you right now?
Yes.
Like, what do you need exactly from me? It does make you stop and think, because I often find with couples, the longer they've been together, it's about kind of word vomit. Oh, this is what happened today. And this is and that. And you are left as the partner going, I'm not sure what to do with all of that information. Right. I mean, I have lots of light bulbs, right? Ideas, ideas, ideas. Or I'm kind of annoyed you even brought this up. I was about to go do something that makes me, have fun. And now you're bringing up negative stuff. All of these things happen in our heads. But then to say, start with curious questions. How can I support you? Is it comfort or solutions you want right now? And then as the listener, what direction to take it in.
And what to attune to.
Yes, exactly. And even better as the speaker, if you can lead with that, like you said, if you know already, hey, I need some ideas on this, or maybe you've got not fix. Did you hear that? It's ideas, not fix. I don't need you to fix it, but I need some ideas. Or I just need you to like comfort, give me that hug, tell me that sucks. How dare they? Like be a part of the experience with me, and then we can solution it later.
Yes. Yes. And as you're talking, I'm aware some people listening might say on the receiving end, like you said, I have another commitment. Or even last night when my husband was sharing, I did feel a little divided because we had dinner like prepped and it was getting late, and we usually kind of encroaches on when we go to sleep. And, it's the whole schedule. And he wanted to really get into it. And I'm like, okay, we're going to eat a little later tonight. And so I really was aware that I wanted to let go of the agenda of dinner when I was kind of in task mode and pivot towards really being present to him. And I did feel a little divided because I was hungry. And yet I did make that choice and wanted to be there for him. But there are other times where I have a commitment or I'm so tired, I don't think I have the capacity to hold space in the way that I want to. Or, if it's about us and I'm feeling like he's using a lot of blame or something, like I might say, I'm noticing I'm feeling defensive. I really am trying to hear you. Like, I might ask some questions, try to understand where he's at. And then if we can't calibrate, there might be a space where I say, can we give this a little bit of a pause? And I want to, have a cup of tea or what have you to kind of just regulate a little bit. And I think I'll have a little bit more bandwidth. Like, I think there's a lot of room for flexibility in how we can care for this space, because this space is where we typically are yearning to feel seen, heard, connected, responded to, that intimacy. And so this is the juicy parts. And yet, to your point, when we're in routine and we're in the pace of life, one person's in a place where they're really primed and open for that. Other person is not. So it's like how to have that recognition and care for that.
It speaks to intentionality. And we're exhausted at the end of the day, right? Like we're like, I want respite. I just want to like put on my pajamas and be that version of myself that doesn't have to be, am I listening properly? Did I say that right? However, that's part of the work of relationships.
And I would add vulnerability, and that we are not always conscious, but oftentimes this more intellectual, even at times, even if it's constructive, evaluative or critical thinking skills. Like that's why a lot of us go to college, the undergrad years is to have critical thinking. And, we develop these skills, and yet it can manifest as protection, as protective layers that we get to operate in this functional, effective, put together place. And yet there's a lot going on beneath the neck, right? And the body and the emotional center, and especially when it matters most in the matters of the heart, we feel some vulnerability. And that's where, again, we feel more bonded, is when that's more visible. And that's where we have access to each other. Not easy to do. It does take a little bit more effort and is sometimes really terrifying.
Definitely. Can you speak to more of that compassion, empathy, especially if one of the partners is more of in their head, more of the feedback giver? And let's say they're on a personal growth journey where they're like watching their partner kind of lag behind, and they're like, I've got all these ideas. Let me give you some feedback for this. But their partners may be in a season of grief, of depression, of anxiety, of burnout. And it's kind of like, just accept me as I am. I want to stop feeling like I'm failing in everything in life, because I see that loop a lot with couples. One is usually in the space of, I'm all in, visioning, let's do this. And the other's like, can we just like sit down and have a tea and not talk for the next 10 days? Because I just am so done. How to hold compassion and empathy for that?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I have a couple stories that come to mind, but I will say that having awareness around capacity and limits, what we're available to, and really making welcome that we're looking at the shared space where we can both get something that we are needing and wanting. Like if it's a win for one and it sucks for the other, like that's not a great interaction in my mind. And the other thing is the one that's enthusiastically learning and developing from a personal growth standpoint. It's very easy to want to project that onto someone else and to start coaching or start offering that feedback as we're talking about. And again, when it's unsolicited, it's likely not going to land. It's likely going to feel like criticism, defensiveness, looping. Or when somebody's not interested, it's like they're giving you a no, right? Like we've given already some little nuggets around how to approach this space if somebody's interested. It's like if you have a friend and you want to go somewhere, you would ask them, like, hey, I have this idea. How's that sound? When works for you? And you're collaborating on how do we have this feel like a win for both of us? Or I have a dear friend and we don't live super close. So if we plan a vacation or plan a weekend together, she will often say, what would you love? Or like, let's talk about like visioning, like, how would this look? So there's a co-creation happening there. So when one's really enthusiastic, I don't think that has to be hidden. I think one can be like, I am so lit up about this and I'd love to share it with you. Are you open to that?
Right.
Or I have some thoughts about how this even plays out in our relationship. Would you be interested in exploring that? And being in one's enthusiasm and their growth, like it's kind of the idea of staying in your lane. I said earlier around encroaching into somebody's space. So I think the awareness around here's where I'm at and then respecting where you're at. And one of the stories that came to mind, I don't know if this is an exact fit, but like you were talking about mental health or even grief. And this was about a year and a half ago. It was a small example, but also really had some potency to it. My husband's not a fan of the story because it doesn't really represent the full context, but I'm going to share it nonetheless. So we're at a breakfast table and tragically his sister had lost her significant other. There was health issues. She knew that, but it wasn't imminent that he was going to die or pass. So it was very heartfelt, tragic. And I was on the West Coast of the US and she's in the Midwest, so almost across the country. So I was expressing, we were kind of just in the air, like we're kind of all feeling it. And so we're at the breakfast table and I'm sharing with my husband, because it was just the day before that I had reached out and I had shared a little bit about my sentiment and my tech. And I felt like really heartfelt about it. Like it was something I felt like spent time in and, felt genuine about. And he wasn't happy. He kind of jumped on me a little bit of like, why'd you do that? Or it was something that he had a negative response to. And I was taken aback. I'm like, total positive intention. Don't see any risk or harm in that. I didn't understand what the issue was. And I felt a little floored and like could feel myself wanting to get defensive, but I'm like, this is super tender. So I'm just going to go super, super slow. And I just sat with it for a minute and I was just befuddled. And then as I contemplated him more, I was like, okay, so what I know about my husband is one of his side interests and ways in which he has supported people is in the grief space. He has a grief companioning certificate. He's done a lot of these workshops and he has such a care for the grieving process and that it's really unique and kind of the care that one can offer. Like so often in Western culture, it's like people don't know what to do with the immense grief. So I'm like, okay, I know that. Somehow it just me being curious to your question earlier. I mean, your comment earlier about being curious. I was like, how come he would be upset with that? And I was like, oh, maybe, he's big brother. And I'm like, oh, is he protective? And so I just queried. I didn't know, but I was like, it could have been like, no, I'm not protected. It could have been something. But I asked, are you feeling protective? And he said, yes. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Like it didn't even need to like have a lot of explanation. I think we talked a little bit and he basically was saying oftentimes when one has that tragedy and the shock of it, getting the onslaught of like all these messages, it can be a lot to respond to. And usually it's a little more helpful if it's after the fact a little bit. And so he was just trying to like have that sensitivity. And I was like, okay, I get it. I would have preferred, right? It was just part of my husband's voice around context. We were in an extremely stressful period of time. We were uprooted. We were traveling. We were trying to figure out if we're going to purchase our first home. It was a lot. So I think there was some work stress, whatever. I would have preferred him to say, that's sweet. I feel really protective, right? Like just lead with that vulnerability, a little bit of his deeper kind of emotional need there. And yet we somehow connected. And that could have easily been a mess.
It's a good reminder that when feedback is not received well, that we don't have to take it so personally, though we do. Because again, our opinion's valued other places. So why aren't you valuing it? Like, wait, let me ask the curious questions so I better understand where maybe I crossed the line, right? Like in that situation, a line you didn't know that was there, or what else is going on in their world that right now they might be taking this feedback poorly, whereas 2 days later they're fine. Hear it. It isn't always about us.
No.
We make it about us, but it's not always about us.
Yes. And people come to things differently, to your point around mental health or being in a particular phase where they're not feeling receptive. People have different ways of processing. Some people need to be in a place of simmering a bit in what they're feeling or going there a bit more. People learn through body sensations. Some people learn through processing verbally, through journaling. There is a multitude of ways in which people can have real insight and growth. So for the question around if one is enthusiastic and learning a lot and excited and wanting their partner to come along, totally get it. Also, them coming to their own growth in their own way and respecting that and learning, like sometimes it might even be more profound than one would imagine, right? Like if they're going to come to it differently. And on a little bit of a side, I mentioned my dissertation. And again, it was many, many years ago. One of the themes that bared out in that is that in this growth orientation relationship, people didn't always start the growth path together. Oftentimes it was one that was going first, so to speak, and the other one just started to notice in their own time. It wasn't put on them. It wasn't asked of them necessarily explicitly. It was the desire of like, I see that looks good. And I curiosity and like wanting to engage. And then they eventually did. So it often is really an uncertain time when one is growing. I mean, the other thing I'll say is in my PhD program, I had already done an undergrad and I had a master's and I was now in this PhD program. And they were saying, if you're in relationship, I want to say it was like 73% or something high percentage, your relationship might not make it. Like this is a growth, you're going to be propelled and the level of growth. And when the other person doesn't have a way to connect or, it just can pose a real conflict. And yet I do think that there's a lot of ways to share, include the partner, and also give room and space for growth to happen. But it will put tension usually on the relationship.
Oh, that's so true. I remember that in my master's program. It was like, hey guys, 50% of you. And it's like, okay, this is going to rock our world. But
yes,
I love the idea of like, I always hear the analogy tugboat versus lighthouse. When we're more of a lighthouse of, wow, I'm changing my life. I'm growing in these ways. I'm going to shed light on what I'm doing. I'm going to share about it. Even if you roll your eyes, I'm still going to be there. Instead of come and do this with me. You should do this. Eat better, whatever. Tugboating them along, the nagging, the things we don't enjoy doing, giving feedback and it not being received well. We don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. And I am totally the type where when my husband gives me feedback, he knows it's sandpaper for me. I always call it sandpaper moments. And then I chew on it. However, when I give feedback, I have lots of thoughts. I can sit with his stuff and everything. So it's, sometimes the way we give isn't always how we receive.
Yes.
And I might externally process with other people to really work out what I think and feel about what he shared. And then come back to him and be like, hey, I think you were right. And of course, in that moment, he would love to hear that first.
Yeah.
I'm chewing on this. I don't like what you said, but I think you're right. I'm stubborn. It takes me a bit. So this is something that he and I have worked on. It's like, how do we not only give feedback, but receive feedback? Because it's different. Something I want to segue us into, because there's so many listeners who are in bicultural relationships. I have noticed even the word feedback has cultural differences.
Yes.
So what does that mean? Is feedback only constructive criticism? Is feedback only positive feedback, right? How do you help couples and even individuals navigate when it's actually around what the word feedback means? And honestly, people can come from the same culture and feedback means something different to them.
Agreed. So agreed. Well, I think that it requires slowing down. And while this might feel arduous at times, like a lot of effort to unpack, tell me more about what that means to you, or here's what feedback means to me? Would you be willing to share it? Like being able to have that deeper understanding. And while so even like you said, even in same culture, so to speak, like I'm in the US, I mentioned West Coast versus Midwest. Like there's very different cultural norms. But even if you're in the same so-called region and then your family environment is very different, like there's a lot of variation here. And there is something that as humans, I think we enjoy, which is to automate, to conserve energy and to assume sometimes. And with convention or tradition, we sometimes can rely on that. We don't need to question it. We can it's what we do, right? It's what happens. And so there's an ease in that. And I think we appreciate the backing of that. And at the same time, as I just said, it can be relatively assumptive and people sometimes miss the deeper layers or the real meaning making. And so if we do slow down and we do pause and understand, and this could take a lot of work when we're looking at vast differences. And yet through that work, I think there can be something really special that can happen, that the couple is identifying and something that is uniquely them that expresses it's kind of curriculum for developing. I genuinely think you mentioned Gottman's. God, I remember hearing out of the Institute that there's like 7 or 8 for every couple. They called it irreconcilable differences to attorney. That might sound like a legal thing, but it's more of like the extrovert, the introvert, the spender, the saver. Like we negotiate these differences and often these will not change. It's part of our functioning. And yet the opportunity to work together, to support each other, to have it feel collaborative is the initiative. It is the curriculum for developing intimacy. We've got each other's back. It's not hierarchical, good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just we honor each other and we're in service of both of us feeling good. So I do think that could happen when we have cultural differences and we really take the time to understand and learn and have value for what the essence of what matters to the person and how to cherish that and include that. And when we develop strategies, it's in service of what both people are needing and valuing. And so that can take a lot more work, but then you have this unique way that you've developed that you earned that together. It kind of on an aside, last thing I'll say here, it reminds me when I had a couple clients who are in non-monogamous relationships. And I've had a couple guests. It's not my primary focus. And yet one of the things I understand is sometimes they have to create new language because it just doesn't exist. This is kind of sometimes charting a new path when there's not a lot of people that came before you that can impart that wisdom or understanding.
Yes, absolutely. So funny you brought up like those unsolvable differences that the Gottmans talk about, because often when I talk about arguing with couples, I go like, hey, just letting you know, there will be a chunk of this that will not be resolved. But without a skip, there's this moment where they realize the thing that they can't resolve is probably one of the things that attracted each other in the beginning.
Yes.
You were so carefree and so like you just adaptable and flexible. And now you won't plan anything and you're not structured. And so I want to give you feedback on this. And it's like, wait, but that's why you fell in love with them. Like you loved that this was something about them. And so reminding us that these differences, these things that annoy us now that we want to give feedback on, often were what attracted us to them in the beginning, and still also something we value about them. Just, we don't like how the pendulum swings, but you're really too far over there. Like meet me more in the middle, right? It's like, okay, but these differences were always there. And now it's how can you see the strength still in them versus give the feedback or the criticism of how it negatively impacts our lives. What
Absolutely.
you can be doing differently.
If I can comment on that I also would, for people who are experiencing some version of that, holding some space, if there's strong energy, if my partner were to do XYZ or be more structured, be on time, or be more dependable about a plan, what would that allow me to feel? That there's a real need getting activated or could be threatening. Because the other thing we do in relationship, unconsciously, not knowingly, is we pick things that are familiar, that perhaps have wounding around or have some challenge, that a rupture in relationship in the past. And unconsciously, we're recognizing that as familiar and also the opportunity to have repair or have some corrective experience or healing around it. So when we then become more aware after that first phase of relationship and we're seeing, oh, this is how you operate. This is what it looks like. We're not filling in the blank with fantasy. And we're contending with, okay, this is the sandpaper. Like there's a rub here. And is it just my criticism and my judgment about what's right or wrong? Or is this have some significant energy or like frustration or intensity around? And can I get curious about what that is for me? What that would mean for me? I'd be able to trust you more. I remember, gosh, my mother was never like, she missed all kinds of important things and what that felt like. And like, you're my person and I need you to be there. Like that makes sense, right?
Yep.
And how to talk about that. That's the more important thing.
Yes. And I find people are willing to change when it's about like, I would trust you more. Like, oh, well, I want that. Okay, that makes sense. Versus like, this just annoys you. And, like, hey,
it's not the right way.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Because it often feels like perfectionism coming out in feedback. Well,
yes.
You need me to do it this exact way. And it's a control issue. Or, we create the villain victim role play as that. And when it starts with, hey, I just had some good intentions and I wanted to give you feedback. And it ends with hurt feelings and resentment and silence in a home. It makes you go, well, how do we break this cycle? So as we come kind of to the end, what would be your first steps in working with a couple to say, let's start with this. Here's your first step in resolving that cycle that keeps happening.
Yes. Well, one other thought I want to say before I respond to that is that this can actually feel a little bit addictive or even habitual. And we're talking about the Gottmans. One of the other things they talk about is a negative sentiment override. So there can be a little bit of a competitiveness that can show up in partnership where if we're giving each other this feedback that feels a bit critical, then we're somehow creating a norm that we're giving each other this perfectionistic, like you didn't do it right, or, and then it's somehow taking this life. So that can be problematic, again, for the reasons we've already discussed around the real reasons why we bond in partnership is for this sense of home and connective feeling. So we've really touched on a lot. I will reiterate and just try to be a little bit more concise that if you want to raise your hand or point to the thing that hurts, like notice that impulse. And if you can catch it, I think your listeners will have access. I have a free relationship guide that gives some languaging and examples that can workshop this. But basically, if you can recognize that tendency to point to something, and if you can slow down and just wonder, what does this mean to me? If my partner were to do the thing I'm asking, what would that allow me to feel? And just getting a little bit more connected around the significance of how come that matters. Sometimes it is just like, I think it's better. I think my way's better, for these reasons, right? And then you can have a conversation about like, which way do we want to have consensus about how we fold the towels? Maybe it doesn't matter to your point, right? But if there is something that does matter and you just reflected it back to me that this is where we tend to feel more drawn in as a partner in the receiving mode. And it sets the stage for responsiveness and opportunity for repair because we're making it more visible. We're giving clear signal to our partner. They know what you're experiencing a little bit more clearly, and then they have an opportunity to respond rather than contending with the characterization and defending against that. They're like, oh, like, you don't feel like you want to trust me more, or like this dependability, like when you don't know that uncertainty, it feels scary. It reminds you of your mom. I want to help.
Right. I don't want to add to that. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So I just think turning that criticism into a request or in some type of reveal is often going to set that interaction up for more connected communication.
I agree. And, when I reflect on everything you've talked about, you've given a lot of simple communication tweaks. This isn't 180 in how people talk. It's kind of like setting the stage, like, hey, do you have a time to talk and give me some feedback? Or do you have time to listen? Or if you're the listener, what is it I can do to support you, right? Like these are small one sentence things we can add. And then in this, it's more introspective. Notice the impulse, pause before responding, major nervous system work. It isn't a small tweak. it feels like you're saying like, just pause. That seems so small. We always, in the therapy world, we're like, just take a pause. That is the hardest tool we can give a client. Pause. No, I don't want to pause. Like 13-year-old in me is like ready to fight. I'm throwing down, right? There's a part of us this when we say pause, that truly I think is the hardest work. The small tweaks are about remembering to do it. Remembering the sentence to say, remembering the question to ask, remembering to be curious. That's intentionality and being present. The pause is, this is my stuff.
Yes. And I would say the motivator for me was I don't want what I've been creating. I want something different. And being able to tolerate a little bit of the discomfort that if I resort to what is habitual to me, it might feel like relief in the moment, but perhaps it's going to create more of the pain and difficulty that I'm wanting to shift out of. And so if I can try something new, tolerate the uncertainty and the discomfort, it's like a learning curve. Like anytime we do something, it feels like I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know what's going to happen. But if we can tolerate that a little bit in service of something that we're wanting to change or cultivate, like deeper, like more responsiveness. I want to feel heard around this, rather than totally getting defensiveness.
Right.
I'm willing to take that risk in service of having more connection around this.
Yes. Yes. And I love how you reminded us from your own story that just because you give feedback doesn't mean your partner's ready to receive it. And it doesn't have to be about you then. You can stop and go, ooh, okay, let me just check in. To see what's going on for you so that I better understand how I can be a support, or especially in a grieving situation where you need me. And how beautiful that you guys were, like, you were able to be self-aware in that moment to go like, okay, hold on. Like, this was really nice. I was being loving and kind. This is around grief. What is, he might be this. And not all of us have the words for that or that vulnerability within ourselves. But just that reminder, it isn't always about us when our partner doesn't receive feedback well. That doesn't mean keep doing it. That means ask questions.
Yes, because I would say it doesn't have to sound pretty. It doesn't have to look pretty. Just even saying out, I could have said, okay, that's not what I was expecting. I imagine there's something going on here for you. I don't know what it is.
Yep.
And that could have been at least something to acknowledge there's something you're experiencing that I don't quite understand, and I'm going to just let that rest. And then maybe that's an invitation where they can reflect like, okay, there is something here. It doesn't have to look all like polished. It could just be like, here's what I'm noticing.
Right. Absolutely. Dear listener, your homework this week is to notice your impulse and slow down. We're giving you the hardest work first. Notice your impulse, but slow it down and look at how your feedback, which may come across as a criticism, can become more of a request or a reveal of what's really going on within you. I think that homework will last you a month. It's even more than months, right? This is a lifetime. So working on it actually truly is a lifetime, but is literally the core work that we have to do to better understand why do we even have the impulse to give the feedback, or what is it we really need from our partners. That's key to growing connection, to growing intimacy for all couples. Thank you so much, Dr. Higgins, for sharing with us, for teaching us, for giving your own stories and experiences. If people want to connect with you, and of course, we're definitely going to have your resources in the show notes. But if they're like, right now, I want to find her, where's the best way for them to do that?
Thank you. drjessicahiggins.com is my website, and that has everything that I'm up to there as far as programs, retreats, coaching work. Also the podcast, Empowered Relationship Podcast, which I believe you're going to be a guest on upcoming, probably be several months, but I probably a few weeks ago published my 500th episode. So I've been podcasting for 10 years, and I'm just so grateful for all the people contributing and yourself here and the platform that you're creating here. So yes, that's the best way to find me. I am on social media, but mostly the website I would say is the best place to go.
Perfect. I will make sure the website and the podcast are in the show notes below. And I encourage you to get her resource, to use it in your relationship. I know often we're like, oh, that's a great idea. I'll download it. Use the stuff. It is a simple tool. You guys can be going ahead and having some discussions from. So I love that you've got that and you've offered that to us. So thank you again, Dr. Higgins. I'm going to be coming back to this episode as well for myself and be like, yep, that's a good reminder, right? We need these too. Like, that's a good reminder. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Not only professionally, but personally, how much we need this information, especially around feedback. So thank you again for that.
Yes. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And dear listener, we'll see you next week. Before you go, I want to leave you with this. The effort you put into your relationship is one of the most important investments you'll ever make. How you communicate and grow together shapes your home, your leadership, and the example you set for the people around you. Relationship work is truly legacy work, and it quietly impacts more lives than we often realize. If this episode resonated, consider sharing it with someone you care about, a partner, a friend, or another couple who's building a full life and want their relationship to be the best part of it too. And if you're enjoying these conversations, make sure to follow or subscribe to Relationship Reset. Leaving a rating or review also helps this message reach more couples who are ready to grow with intention. I'll see you next week.